Well, hey everybody, welcome to Personal Finance Basics. This is our third and last week of this course. I'm on here with Lucas Donnelly. Lucas has been taking us through this content. He's an attender at Redemption, which by the way, if you're joining us and you don't know about Redemption, this course is hosted by Redemption Community Church. We're glad that you're joining us, and we would love to invite you to one of our weekend services. Right now, we're entirely online due to COVID. And our services are available live at 5 p.m. and at 9 a.m. Saturday, 5 p.m. Sunday, 9 a.m. on our Facebook page, Redemption STL. RedemptionCommunityChurch.com is our website, RedemptionSTL.com. Sorry, I misspoke on that. But you can join us on our Facebook page or on our website for our services, and we would just love to invite you to that. By the way, if you missed the previous 2 weeks of this course, they are available on YouTube at our YouTube page. Again, Redemption STL, that's kind of the tag for everything. So go search for that and you'll find Lucas's previous 2 classes. The first week he talked about basic principles of finance, what families can really take from the business world and apply to their lives. He did a killer job, so much good content, so much actionable content so quickly. You definitely want to go check that out. And then last week was budgeting. He did a phenomenal job walking you through how to develop and then keep and maintain a budget. So you'll definitely want to go check out those previous 2 classes if you're joining this one and haven't seen those. Tonight, Lucas, you're talking about credit. What
Right.
it is, how it works, kind of ins and outs of it, how to improve yours. I'm really looking forward to tonight because I'll be honest, this is a piece of finance that is probably the most confusing to me of the subjects that you've covered. So I'm really anxious and interested to hear what you have to say about it. I will be sending out the document that Lucas sent me, his PowerPoint notes, everything's in there. So don't feel like you have to take notes on everything. If you're joining us later in some other venue, just go to our website and shoot us an email. Go to our contact page, shoot us an email, and I will get you that content after the fact. So we're glad that you're here. We're glad that you're joining us from wherever you are at whatever time you're joining. I'm going to hand things over to Lucas. I'm going to step out in the way of video. He's going to take charge and share his screen with you and walk you through all this, but I'll be monitoring if you have any questions as we go, and Lucas will be sure to be watching that as well and answer as things come up. So thank you for being here. Lucas, I'm going to hand it over to you, and I'm going to pop out a video.
Super. Thank you so much, Casey. You kind of already did the recap that I was hoping to make, so I'll make this one short. This is week 3, so this is the last week of the personal finance course that we've been doing together. So just as a quick summary of what we've learned the last 3 weeks. First of all, your family is just like a business. You have a balance sheet, you have a profit and loss statement, you have cash flow, and if any good business effectively manages their money this way, you should consider doing the same. It's the same components, and you'll be amazed at the progress that you can make if you track these things. Then we talked about a good but not stressful budget. So set a few frameworks to help you as you start this journey or pick up on this journey wherever you are. Talked about the 50-30-20 rule, which I'll review in just a second. Talked about automating your fixed expenses so that all the cumbersome things that you've already optimized, you're already spending an adequate amount. You automate that so you can focus on your variable expenses where you really try and see how you can economize and become efficient there. And then also budgeting your fun, being sure to have space in your budget to actually enjoy time with your family and your friends in a way that doesn't feel like you're guilty every time you go out and spend a bunch of money. Just as a quick review, the 50-30-20 budgeting rule is just 50% going to your needs: groceries, housing, utilities, the types of payments that fluctuate very, very little or not at all month over month. 30% towards wants. So that's the fun stuff: shopping, eating out, any hobbies that you want to pick up. That's the stuff that you can really move up and down, and where most people actually want to spend most of their time optimizing in their budget. And then 20% for savings, and that would include paying off debt, things like that. So you'll have this document to review on the highest priorities, and week 2's document, the presentation goes further in depth on this. So highly recommend you take a look at that. Today, we're going to talk about something, as Casey kind of alluded to. It's a black box. Credit scores are confusing. I got into this credit world because I was a senior in college at the time. I needed to take my wife on her honeymoon. I just spent every dime that I had on our engagement ring. So I needed to find some sort of way to afford our honeymoon. And I got into this credit card world of airline miles, and I got a couple credit cards with the airline miles. Got those bonuses, and we went on a trip to Hawaii. 10-day vacation, flight, hotel, basically everything was completely paid for. And I was able to do that by spending exactly what I would have spent on my debit card at the time, except I used a credit card and got points. So it was really more of a means to an end to get into the whole, world of credit. But in the process, I learned a ton about how credit scores work, what it looks like to improve your credit score over time, no matter where you're starting from. If you're someone that's younger and doesn't have a lot of credit buildup, or someone who's older, who may have made some mistakes in the past, has some outstanding debt, there are some ways to improve that, and understanding what composes a score is the most important way to get there. So for those of you who don't know, there are 5 components to a credit score. And I've ranked these in order of importance. And even the credit bureaus, it's kind of crazy. It's a total black box. The credit bureaus do not give much transparency into how they actually calculate their score, but they do provide these guidelines, and it's super important to walk through. So the first component is payment history. If you don't pay your credit card on time, none of the rest of this is going to help you very much. So even your mortgage, your student loans, your auto loans, your credit cards, those types of expenses, even some medical bills, if you don't pay those on time, they will report you to the bureaus. The bureaus meaning Experian, FICO, these types of companies that manage the credit score process, and you will take a hit to your credit score. We'll talk about what happens when you have a lower credit score and the effects of that in just a minute. The second really important concept of a credit score is credit utilization. And this is the one I feel like the majority of people that I've spoken with about this did not know. So it's 30% of your score, and it's the sum of your monthly credit card balance divided by the sum of your credit card limits. So if I have a total balance of $1,000 and I have one credit card with a limit of $5,000 and another credit card with a limit of $5,000, then my credit utilization is 10%. That's actually the percentage that you want to aim for when trying to build your credit. That can be confusing to a lot of people. So I just want to repeat that again. Just the sum of your balances divided by the sum of your limits. So even if you didn't use one of those credit cards that month, it still counts towards the overall limit. And the lower the utilization, the better your score is going to be, the better it's going to improve, the quicker it'll improve over time. The third component is the average age of accounts. So if you applied for a card, let's make this very simple. You applied for a card 10 years ago, and then you apply for a card yesterday, your average age of accounts will be 5 years old. The older, the better. They haven't really provided guidance on the age that they want for you to have, but there are a few tools that I'm going to share with you that will give you some guidance on what that looks like to have a strong average age of accounts. Another nuance here is it's not just credit cards that they look at. They look at other debt facilities. So I took a hit to my credit score that I didn't expect when I paid off my oldest student loan. I had a student loan. It was just a couple grand, and it was one of the first ones that I received. So I paid that off in full, a couple years ago, and I saw my score go down more than it usually does, more than it usually fluctuates month over month. And when I did the the digging and I looked into it, I realized that my average age of accounts looked a lot younger because I paid off that oldest debt. So this is where the kind of question of how effective a credit score is comes into play, because I just paid off some debt that I borrowed over time and my score went down. Shouldn't that indicate that I'm a good borrower, meaning that I take out debt and then I pay it off over time? Well, it does. Over time, my score continued to go up, and those are the things that you want to continue to do, obviously. But there are some short-term consequences of that make credit scores pretty confusing to a lot of people. So a principle there is don't freak out. If you're doing the right things, and it's not because you have a ton of debt or you missed a payment or something, your score goes down a little more than normal 1 month, don't freak out. These things happen. The same thing will happen with number 4 when you do an inquiry. So even if you go to an auto dealership to get an auto loan, they ask for your social security number, they pull your credit. It's called a hard pull. Whenever you do these things, this is another kind of word of advice. Ask them beforehand if they're going to do a hard pull or a soft pull. A hard pull shows up as an inquiry on your account. A soft pull doesn't. And if at all possible for them to do a soft pull, it's just better for your score. It's not a big deal, but you definitely don't want to have a bunch of recent hard pulls, credit inquiries on your account, because that'll kind of depress your score the more and more that you do it. For example, when I look at my credit score, I have 3 hard pulls. I have one from my mortgage that I applied for just over 2 years ago. I have one for the auto loan that I got in January. And then I have one that I honestly cannot remember what it was for. And it takes 2 years for those hard pulls to fall off of your account. So not a big deal. My score went down slightly as I got a mortgage and an auto loan in the same month when I moved back to St. Louis. But it ended up eventually going up because of number 5, credit mix. So the other thing that credit bureaus want to look at to show that you're a worthy borrower is that you have multiple types of debt. So if you have a mortgage, as well as a credit card, as well as an auto loan, as well as a student loan, this is another kind of counterintuitive piece of the game, is that it shows that you have a diverse credit mix. You're not just solely relying on credit cards to finance your life or however they look at it. And seeing that diverse amount of payments being made on time towards different borrowers is another good sign. So I've alluded to this, but sometimes it's just confusing. Like, why is the credit mix so important? Why are the average age of accounts so important if you're paying off your oldest loans? It's confusing, I agree, but one thing that's super important is that you know how the game is played, because that's going to have an impact on your score over time, for better or for worse. Moving on to the next slide. So why is a good score good? We just talked about the components of a credit score and why it's so important. What does that mean for you if you have a good score? One is preferential rates. So if you are in the market for a new home, if you're going to buy a car, if you're getting insurance, even getting student loans for yourself or for your kids, the higher your score, the lower the interest rate you're going to pay. And that's the real compounding money saver. So the bogey that I would aim for initially is 720. When I look at auto loans or even mortgages, they look for a 720 as kind of the target that gives that crosses the threshold for the highest quality of borrower. So huge deal. That's by far the biggest benefit of having a good credit score. This is what can save you hundreds of thousands of dollars over your adult life. If you think about your mortgage rate, your auto rate, the student loans, that has a huge impact. You want to make sure that you have a good credit score to keep those interest rates down as low as possible. The other factor that's somewhat intuitive but tied to number 1 is easier approvals. So if you have a 700, let's use 720 as our target or above, it's very easy to get approved for loans. So if you are getting a new credit card, maybe you're trying to get a rental apartment for yourself, or for your kid. Let's say your child is going to school and they're going to rent an apartment, and it's in your name. They're going to look at your credit score, and the higher your score is, the easier the process is going to be for being approved. Tied to that are security deposits. So other apartments, if you have a low score, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to deny you for that apartment, but they're going to say, well, we're going to need 2 months rent up front instead of our usual one. Or sometimes there's no deposit required if you have a certain credit score, and if you're under that, you're out of luck. You have to pay a big deposit and tie that money up. Also, utilities, cell phone providers, they do the same thing. So if you have unproven, like no credit or bad credit, they may ask for a deposit, which is just kind of setting money aside needlessly. If you can develop a good score, you can avoid those types of unnecessary issues. And then the last thing, a good score begets a good score. So if you have a good score, let's say you've paid off your mortgage, you've paid off your auto loan, you've never missed a payment, and you apply for a credit score, more than likely you're going to get a pretty high limit. And if you do it again, let's say you needed some other line of credit, a home equity line of credit or something like that, that a HELOC's not as a good example, but another credit card, you'll get a higher limit again, which if you go back to point number 2 here, the higher your total limits, the easier it is to stay within that low credit utilization range. I would say target 10, but under 30% of your total limit. It begets a better score. It just gets easier and easier for good borrowers to be looked at as good borrowers. So what if you're in a position that maybe you're younger, you haven't had any opportunity to have a credit score before, maybe you're older, and you're looking to improve your score. Here are the 5 things that I think are most important in terms of trying to improve it or build it. The first, I've said this every single week, measure what matters. I use Credit Karma. It's free. A couple of the credit card issuers that I have also have free services. I track them almost every month just to make sure no one's stolen my social, that my balances aren't out of whack, that things like my average age of account, that story where I paid off my student loan and my score went down. I don't need to freak out because I know what's going on. I'm able to dig into it, and I can't recommend that enough. The second, if you're in a tough spot, if you're trying to find ways to build your credit, there's actually a service called Experian Boost. You can sign up, and if your cell phone and utility bills are in your name, they will allow that. Many of I think all the cell phone providers and many utility providers will allow you to sign up for this program, and it actually boosts your score. So it's not going to be a massive difference, but if you don't have any other way to do so to improve your score, this is a way to do it. And it kind of starts building that existing credit. Or if you're in a position where you've made some bad decisions, or maybe you missed a payment for one reason or another, this is a good way to have, if it's your cell phone, your electricity, and your water bill, and they all accept Experian, this Experian Boost program, you have 3 payments each month that are getting made month in, month out, and that will compound over time and improve your score. The third one that we've already talked about is super important and often unknown. Do not spend your full credit limit. And I think that's where a lot of people end up going wrong, is because they have a credit card and the limit's $5,000. So they feel like they can go up to that $5,000 limit. Well, the credit bureaus look at that and say, okay, I gave you $5,000, but did you need every dollar of it? Are you in some sort of financial distress that you needed all this money, and then your score ends up going down? If you keep that, under 30% and aim for 10%, you're going to start seeing your score go up higher and higher each month. That 10% bogey is really where you want to be to start seeing it improve month over month. And think about it this way. What you're doing is you're telling the credit bureaus that you are a borrower and that you're responsible. You don't need all that they gave you. So you're able to handle a $10,000 credit limit because you only need to use $1,000 of it each month, and you pay it off every single month. That's what they're looking for in a borrower. Another thing that I've heard pretty often is closing old cards. So if you got that bank, whatever bank you worked with in high school, you got their credit card, and you feel like you've kind of grown up and graduated and wanted to do something else, most people will close that card, which really, really hurts your score. My wife did that, unfortunately, as we were still kind of figuring all this out. When we saw her score go down, we had no clue what happened because she's otherwise a very responsible borrower. And we looked at the details, and she closed that card. The average age of her accounts went up a ton. It looked a lot newer. And eventually we had to kind of rebuild her score. It wasn't dramatic, but it had an effect. And then the last thing is apply sparingly. So you only want to get a new card or a new loan when you need one. It's good to be prepared. So anticipate your needs in the future because, in a situation like COVID where we're in, where people may have lost their jobs and need that extra type of flexibility, you want to already have one at that time. But above that, I would be careful about how much you apply for, because that'll increase your inquiries and your score will eventually go down. So here are some principles that I want to share that I live by and that I think is pretty important to address. The first thing, so this is zooming in. We were looking at broader credit before. Now we're talking about credit cards, which seems to be a pretty controversial topic. There are some schools of thoughts that are completely anti-credit cards. There are some people that leverage them too much to their detriment. I'm proposing a middle ground. But before I say that, some people should not use a credit card. This can be dangerous. If people think that example I shared about someone with a $5,000 credit limit spending all $5,000, that person probably doesn't have the discipline or self-control to responsibly use a credit card, and it's going to end up hurting your score, hurting your financial situation, and over leveraging your lifestyle. So it's harder to build good credit without credit cards, but any poor spending habits that lead you to spend more than you make, like we talked about last week, is going to make any of the gains you make from having a good credit score really not worth it. The other piece that I think is really important is to treat your credit card like a debit card. So unless you absolutely are in dire straits or are unable, something like COVID hits and you lose your job, you should pay off your card in full every single month. There's not a month that's gone by that I haven't paid the statement balance exactly what they say is due. And that way you actually benefit from having a credit card. You'll start to see your score go up higher and higher each month, and you're going to accrue points. Those very points that I use to go on our honeymoon to Hawaii. The third really important principle is for you to set goals. So if you had extra money, let's say you get a credit card that gives you cash back for something, how would you use it? Would you pay off debt with it? Would you renovate your home? Would you go on a vacation? That will help inform what type of credit card you should look for, the one that's going to be most beneficial for you and have the highest impact of your spending. Which goes into number 4, using the budget that you put together last week. I'm assuming all of you went through your budget, you downloaded Clarity or Mint, you put your budget together. Use that to determine the card that's going to give you the most impact and achieve the goal that you're looking for. So those are kind of the ways that I look at it, the foundations of how I use it. And I will share as a personal anecdote, I over time have built a really strong credit score because of these principles. Have always been able to have the lowest rate, even though I was pretty young and didn't have a lot of credit history. I was able to make up for that because of these other principles that I share with you all. And actually, right now I'm doing this call from Reno, Nevada, visiting some family because of the fact that I had a lot of points that I'd accrued. I paid off my statement every single month. I didn't spend more than I would. A lot of people just feel like since they have a card, they can spend more. I just spent exactly what I would have if I had cash in my pocket, and got a ton of points. So my wife and I are going on a trip around the country, staying in hotels, I think 10 nights, and traveling from St. Louis to LA and back, and it's all free. I haven't really spent a dime outside of gas for our travels. And that's because of responsibly using a credit card. So again, I need to reiterate that some people shouldn't have a card. And I think the anti-credit card camps in the personal finance community are kind of solving for that group of people that just aren't able to manage their spending. And when they have a higher limit, they just use it all. I'm not speaking to that group of people when I talk about the benefits of having a credit card. But if you're able to do this responsibly, to treat your credit card like a debit card, paying it off every single month, you can set some pretty awesome goals and make your money work for you. You could, at the very least, you can talk to me if you're interested in more details, but at the very least, you could get a card that gives you 2% cash back for every dollar that you spend. So what would you use with 2% of all your spending back in your pocket? There's some cool opportunities there. So just as a recap of today, payment history and credit utilization are the two biggest factors when it comes to a credit score. If you don't get these two basics, the other three don't really matter as much. So pay your bills on time. If you tuned in last week, we talked about automating your fixed expenses. That's the very type of thing that I'm talking about, in that making sure those are automated so there's no user error. There's no, oh, oops, I didn't get the mail. I forgot to pay the mortgage or send the check in, whatever it might be. That's automated. So you don't even have to worry about that payment history component, as well as automating your credit card payments to pay it off in full, so that you're not able to allow yourself to be flexible and kind of extend yourself more than you need to be. And then the second part is credit utilization. Make sure after this call, take a look at your last credit card balance and look at your credit limit and see what that number is, what your credit utilization is. It's 30% of your score, and you really want to be sure that it's under 30%. Anything above 30%, and you can see your score go down pretty heavily. And if you aim for 10% of your total limit, you're in a good spot. So sometimes it's good to have multiple credit cards, just because you have a much higher limit to work with. And you can start seeing your score improve over the long run. So hopefully this was helpful, Redemption. I'm always available. This is my hobby, to talk through these sorts of things. So I would be happy to chat with any of you one-on-one, see if there's any plan. I'm happy to help you put your plan in place to improve your personal finances, whether it be from week one and looking at your personal finances like a good business would. Week two, building an effective budget that doesn't make you guilty every time you spend a dollar. And then number three, week three, the black box that is credit scores, what it looks like to understand a credit score, to improve your score, and then for some of you, using credit cards to really boost your score and get points that you can enjoy as well. So hopefully this was helpful. Get a hold of me if you need anything, and I'll see you hopefully at Redemption. Take care.
Well, hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Lucas, thank you so much for the time that you've invested these last couple of weeks to bring us this content. This has been absolutely fantastic. And man, that was so helpful to me, just listening to it and learning how kind of this works. And yeah, I'm so grateful personally for this content. And I know our people are going to really benefit from it a lot.
It's not all intuitive is why I think it doesn't make total logical sense on why you'd have a good score or a bad score. So it's good to just
totally
know the
struck
rules.
Me when you were talking that was what struck me. I was like, I don't know how anyone would have gotten to this without you explaining it. You know?
Right.
Or
right.
doing
right.
a good bit of homework and research.
Totally.
Yeah, very many pieces not intuitive, but really you did a fantastic job walking us through it. That makes so much more sense to me personally, and I know that people are gonna really benefit from this. So really thank you for your time, especially these last 2 weeks that you've been here as you've been traveling. Thank you for taking the time to do this. I'm really grateful. And guys, I know Lucas, and I know that he means it when he says like he enjoys talking about this. So if you have questions, honestly, reach out to us at redemptionstl.com. Send us a contact and we will put you in touch with Lucas because he really does mean that when he says he's happy to help and to walk through things with you. And as I said, if you signed up for this class in real time, I will be sending you Lucas's notes, his entire PowerPoint. So everything that he talked about today, we'll get that to you. If you're watching this later on YouTube, again, go to redemptionstl.com, send us a contact, go to our contact page and send us an email and let us know that you watched it and you liked the notes, and we will get those to you. So please do. We would love to resource you however we can. And once again, if you're watching this and you're not part of Redemption or you don't even know what Redemption is, we just want to invite you to join us for one of our services on the weekends. As I said, we have Saturday night at 5 p.m., Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And you can see that through our Facebook page, Redemption Community Church, and through our website, redemptionstl.com. There's a little button that says like tune in right when you log on, and you can see us there. So Lucas, once again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for walking us through all this. It's been fantastic. We've already had so many people watching after the fact, and I love that. I think that's incredible, and I know that that's going to be the case for this class as well. So Lucas, thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for joining us, and we will look forward to seeing you next time.
Awesome. See you then.
All right. Bye, Lucas.
See ya.